contrary to the blatantly obvious woke propaganda in movies during recent years, Iron Man 2 would be more of a warm-up for the times to come. Seeing as this was only 2010, the woke era had not yet flowered, so the subliminal messages in this movie aren't exactly full-on signals. They're more like hints of signals, like a collection of widely dispersed dots on a coordinate plane, with seemingly no connection to each other, unless you know what the entire picture is supposed to look like. I suppose in that case, you could actually call them excellent subliminal messages, since there is enough room for reasonable doubt about whether the secret message exists at all to deny it. Even with the fact that most of the characters are well written and purposeful within the context of the story, you always have to be on your toes when taking in new information, whether it's purely for entertainment or not. If there is an undercover story being told, your mind will naturally begin to put together a timeline of events in the same way it would for an overtly stated story. That's how you can really start to tell that there's something going on beneath the surface. We begin with an introduction to the main antagonist. What the?
Damn, boy, he's thick!
Nice DSLs you got there. Do poverty-stricken Russian men still wear mascara? Apparently anyone can make a miniature arc reactor these days. Whatever. I'm not here to argue about Marvel physics. With this movie especially, I'm going to try my best not to nitpick every little nook and cranny because, like I said, it's a Marvel movie. That would be like giving McDonald's a bad review just because they're not up to par with gourmet restaurants, although that's not the only reason I would give them a bad review. Besides, unlike the last video, things play out pretty smoothly for most of this movie. And that's something I appreciate about Robert Downey Jr. He's a high-value guy who, for the most part, isn't going to play characters that castrate themselves. Unfortunately, later on in the story, there are some extremely questionable scenes that we'll need to go over. But for now, let's continue. Tony checks his blood toxicity. I don't want to spoil this for you yet, so just keep it in mind because it'll come up later. Pepper Potts is made the CEO of Stark Industries, but it's not necessarily woke since we as the audience have seen how faithful and supportive she was for Tony, especially in the first movie. Her character is authentic, and it would make sense story-wise even if there was a dash of wokeness added in. The only thing I was a little iffy on was this part.
And then I realized, it's you. It's always been you.
It's always been you. Not gonna lie, that line was a little bit sus, but no matter, let's move on. Black Widow's first appearance. I honestly got a little nostalgic remembering the first time I saw this when I was 10 years old. And then comes the little scene where she kicks the ass of a man twice her size and 3 times her weight. Yada yada yada, the usual girl boss shit, doesn't really matter. Moving on.
Mr. Musk.
Mr. Musk? And with significantly less hair, I see. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course. If I was balding and rich, I wouldn't be opposed to a hair transplant either.
Yeah, good idea for an electric jet.
You do?
Yeah.
Then we'll make it work.
Planting seeds, planting seeds. Now here's an interesting character. Ironically enough, she's probably one of the most interesting characters in the Marvel Universe. Not because of her role in the movie per se, but more so on a meta level. It's how the writers try to use her that makes her interesting. See, this woman is nothing more than the whore reporter. The audience knows this, and so do the writers. As a matter of fact, they're so aware of this that they even make jokes about it.
She's actually doing a big sprint on me for Vanity Fair. I thought I'd throw her a bone, you know. Right?
Yes. Well, she did quite a spread on Tony last year.
And she wrote a story as well.
It was very impressive.
That was good.
Very well done.
And yet, weirdly enough, they still portray her as someone to take seriously, as a force to be reckoned with.
There's been speculation that I was involved in the events that occurred, the freeway and the rooftop.
I'm sorry, Mr. Stark, but do you honestly expect us to believe that that was a bodyguard in a suit that conveniently appeared, despite the fact that
I know that it's confusing.
Maybe for the socially underdeveloped writer's brains, it just didn't click that once she started whoring herself out for interviews, she lost any respect she might have gained as a super bad bitch girl boss journalist. And as a matter of fact, it seems that feminism has corroded the minds of most people in general these days. These days, even the most vile acts of sexual misconduct are to be excused and even encouraged, as long as it's a woman doing it. And especially if she's doing it for the benefit of her girl boss corporate career lifestyle. Tony, the straight white male protagonist, checks his toxic masculinity again. Oops, I mean his blood toxicity. As the camera pans ever so slowly into the position directly in front of him, Tony then looks the audience directly in the eyes and says,
Got any other bad ideas?
"Got any other bad ideas, Mr. Straight White Man?" Within the context of the story Marvel is telling us, Tony is making fun of himself. On a subconscious level, however, we as the audience have been subjected to his iconic brilliance repeatedly failing him, bringing us to this moment of introspection. He's not just mocking himself. What is being subliminally signaled to us is the white man's gradual realization of his weakening grip over his once powerful empire. Even Tony's most reliable tool, his mind, is not enough to save him this time, as it has so many other times in the past. And just as Tony reflects on the fact that he is reaching the end of his rope, so too is it subliminally signaled to the white men in the audience that you too are approaching your end days. It is to be accepted as fact. And in case there are still any testosterone molecules rolling around in that atrophied body of yours, resulting in emotions that resemble anything close to a fighting spirit, just remember, Mr. Straight White Man, the best tools you have at your disposal are still insufficient. With all the corn syrup and microplastics we've fed you, as well as the decades of cultural attacks that you've been called racist for defending yourself against, we have seen to it that you will be overtaken, and there is nothing you can do about it. Rather than resist your inevitable demise, why not spend the remainder of your days racing to your doom while indulging yourself in reckless, hedonistic activities because nothing matters anyway? Hang on a second though, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So Tony steps out onto the track and is soon spotted on the TV by Pepper Potts. Here's a question. Why is the obedient, servile white man literally named Happy?
Where's Happy?
He's waiting outside.
Okay, get him. I need Happy.
Right away.
Now, of course, technically his name is Harold Hogan, but nobody would have known that unless I just told you, because they only call him Happy. It's also interesting that once her man starts being reckless, she starts acting neurotic, saying, I need Happy.
Where's Happy?
He's waiting outside.
Okay, get him. I need Happy.
Right away.
This can also be interpreted as meaning I need stability. I need grounding. I'm stuck in my head, and since my source for masculine grounding is being unreliable, I am losing my own grip. It almost feels like she's saying in a very childlike way, I need positive emotions. I'm rejecting these uncomfortable feelings that are arising within me on account of my misbehaving source of masculine grounding. The reason single mothers or women with weak husbands are absolutely insane is for this exact reason. I believe this picture will be helpful in demonstrating the principle I'm about to share with you. The umbrella of protection goes as follows. God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, protects and provides for everyone, but especially for men. Not more for men, but it's especially important for men because men have no one else above them other than God to protect and provide for them. Women have men, children have women and men. But it's not just men either. It's the man of the family, of the household. The man of the household is protected and provided for by God, since there is no one above a man, energetically speaking, other than God, obviously. For a masculine man who is grounded within his own power as an entity of authority and in touch with God, in touch with the realm of the unmanifested, not just in blind faith, but consciously, on an experiential level, no weapon formed against him shall prosper. He operates within the natural flow of reality. Everything he experiences, whether positive or negative, is transmuted into something wonderful. He finds euphoria and inspiration even in the most mundane situations. I don't want to get too off track, so let's come back to the picture. God protects and provides for the man protects and provides for the wife, and so on. The point is to say that when you as the man are not properly fulfilling your role within the relationship, you become the catalyst for all sorts of other dysfunctional behavior within your family unit. And it almost always extends beyond that as well. In Tony Stark's case, it most certainly does affect the people around him. All of his associates, especially his white female ones, are frequently having to fix his problems, or problems that are caused as a result of his negligence. I'm not defending Tony Stark's abrasive, irresponsible behavior. That's not the point I'm making. The significance of the point I'm making is revealed in the real-world observations one can make about the demographics of these types of characters in movies. Straight white male protagonists, even ones as cool as Tony Stark, are never enough to satisfy even the most basic needs of the people around them. They are shown as only being able to maintain relationships out of codependency or fear. They take advantage of the people around them and give nothing in return, profiting personally in spite of the suffering and headache they cause everyone else. Tony Stark is falling apart from the inside, and his woman, or rather women, have to pick up the slack for him. To re-emphasize what I said earlier, it's the white women especially that are always shown having to clean up after their sloppy, irresponsible, straight white male companions. That is, until the oh-so-perfect non-white characters show up to save the day. Noticing any sneaky subliminal forces at work yet? Little slightly insignificant but notable detail here, Tony is now trying to convince Pepper Potts to take time off work, whereas in the first movie it was the other way around.
You know that I would help you with anything, but I cannot help you if you're going to start all of this again.
There is nothing except this. There's no art opening. There is no benefit. There is nothing to sign. There is the next mission and nothing else.
Is that so? Well, then I quit.
You stood by my side all these years while I reaped the benefits of destruction. And now that I'm trying to protect the people that I put in harm's way, you're gonna walk out?
You're going to kill yourself, Tony.
What happened to the dynamic? Now granted, things have changed quite a bit since the first movie, and becoming terminally ill with no hope of recovery will knock the wind out of anyone. Still, within the context of every other flipped dynamic in this movie, it's something to keep in mind. At the same time though, the value of movie franchises tends to depreciate faster than the value of a car, and so obviously the only way to keep it interesting is to change the secondary details into something completely different, while at the same time attempting to hold on to most of the substance that made it popular the first time. Pretty obvious when you say it out loud, but you'd be surprised how little people think about this kind of thing. So he breaks out of prison and gets kidnapped by Hammer, and we're treated to yet another display of straight white male tomfoolery.
You and me, we're a lot alike in a lot of ways.
What the fuck? If we strip this scene down to the barest of bones while keeping in mind the context of everything else we've talked about, it will be revealed what the authors are actually communicating to us. This affluent, oblivious, out-of-touch white man thinks that all he has to do is flash his wealth and privilege in front of this impoverished but useful sack of shit, and he'll sign any contracts Hammer asks him to sign so he can take advantage of him. Typical white people, right? Patronizing the downtrodden that they themselves are treading upon.
You need my resources.
That's Hammer's entire character. But enough about Hammer, let's get to the juicy stuff. Here's a part that got my woke senses tingling, not just from this one scene, but because of the sudden connection of dots that occurred between here and the rest of the movie. I genuinely did not suspect a single thing until this very moment, and that's when it all started piecing itself together.
This is ridiculous. I just stuck my neck out for this guy.
I know. I get it. I'm gonna handle it, okay? Just let me handle it.
Handle it, or I'm gonna have to.
Here come the virtuous non-white characters to save the day. Like we talked about earlier, non-whites are always shown having to keep the whites in line. Aside from the growing culture of wokeness in Hollywood around this time, I'm also getting the feeling that there must have been some sort of backlash with how expendable Rhodes' actor was treated in the first movie. And so they decided to set up some sort of black man versus white man battle to really make sure to put the white man in his place this time around. If you ask me, they did Rhodes just fine in the first movie. But the thing with woketards is, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. They're very bitter people, very resentful. More relevantly though, they're very vindictive, and that's really the key word here, vindictive. They're not able to understand life beyond superficial social systems and bureaucratic rules. That's why they push for things like equality of outcome. They think reality itself can be controlled with a few bureaucratic rule changes here and there. They think all problems are caused and can be fixed by radical shifts in social policy. On a more spiritual level, rather than living life in the present, they are controlled by their egos and scrounge for scraps of life energy in the past. Or they make up things about the future in order to make sense of the world. I don't know what it is, they seem to be mentally retarded in some way, but they are just incapable of looking at reality and accepting it for what it is. They have to make things up about reality and jump around the actual reality itself. Unfortunately for them, this is an inaccurate metric. Without digressing too far into a rant about how liberalism is a mental illness, it's important to note that people who write stories like these are all extremely insecure, and they try to control every aspect of the story because they understand the impact that movies like these have on people. This pathological need to assert their own mental diarrhea into the culture is fueled by their own insecurity about their confusion about life. They do not operate from a place of unconditional goodwill as they so often like to pretend. Coming back to the movie, my guess is that they realized they weren't supposed to make the straight white male protagonist as cool and redeeming as he was in the first movie, and turning him back into a total jackass is their way of making up for that cardinal sin. Get it right, people! Brown man good, white man bad. Another super important characteristic of leftists that I'd be remiss not to include is that they believe there is only redemption in revision. They feel the need to revise the way Rhodes was treated in the first movie. And that's not even mentioning the fact that he wasn't treated poorly, but like I said, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Rhodes and Tony superblast each other in an iconic clash battle conclusion. Somehow Rhodes walks away from that ginormous explosion unscathed. Meanwhile, Tony is left fritzing out on the ground. This part is very important, so pay attention. The virtuous non-white character steals the mantle of responsibility from the irresponsible white man, leaving him defeated and ashamed in the ruins of his palace. It's important to note that it's not just Tony's suit that is being stolen. What he really took from him was his legacy.
But if I might make a suggestion, you don't just go and try and kill the guy. I think, if I may, you go after his legacy. That's what you kill.
You go after his legacy. And as a matter of fact, you don't just attack his legacy, you diminish its significance entirely. You accuse him of being responsible for all the world's evils, yet simultaneously try to insult the significance of his impact on the world. You tear down his monuments and rewrite his history. Then, once you've rewritten his history, you accuse him of doing the rewriting, claiming that the only reason he is so concerned about it is because he is guilty of everything of which you accuse him.
And now, like all guilty men, you try to rewrite your own history.
Call me crazy, but it's really starting to feel like there's something the writers are trying to tell us. The next series of events, however, raises the woke activity to dangerous levels. This was truly the moment that all the dots connected in my mind. I was only able to make sense of all the seemingly disconnected clues after I saw this part. Now, of course, there is the story's explanation of the events that are unfolding before us, but you don't need me to explain that to you. There is a very different story being told underneath the surface. Keep in mind for this next sequence that the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. represent the deep state. The white male protagonist is being physically corrupted from the inside out from his palladium poisoning, just as he is being figuratively corrupted from the inside out with everything that is happening to his property and his company. This could also be rewritten as the white man's domain being changed from the inside out. The white woman walks up to the washed up white man, and it is revealed that she has been a double agent for the globalists this entire time. In his hungover days, the straight white man desperately attempts to cling to any former power he once had over her, and can't help but drunkenly mumble,
You're fired.
That's not up to you.
"Silly white man, don't you know? The virtuous white women have joined forces with the other groups you've oppressed. It's too late for you to exile any traitors because you no longer hold the power to do that." She joins the globalist side, and I just can't help but notice how affectionately Nick Fury embraces her, in a sort of she's with us sort of way. But it makes perfect sense. This is what people mean when they say that sex is women's power. Sex is the currency women exchange with men for security and resources. Sex is how women swear loyalty to their man. That's why it's a way bigger hit to a man than it is to a woman when their partner cheats on them. That's why it's also such a big deal for a woman to preserve her virginity. The more men she has had sex with, which is to say, the more men she has sworn her loyalty to, the less trustworthy she is. Any reasonable person would come to the same conclusion. With that being covered, I think it would be negligent not to at least acknowledge how highly suspect this whole scene is. They then mock the white man for losing his formerly strong grip on security when he asks,
What do you want from me?
Fury snaps back,
What do we want from you? No, What do you
want from me? You have become a problem I have to deal with. Contrary to your belief, you are not the center of my universe. Yeah.
This implies they weren't being sustained by the white man in any respect, and were instead only tolerating him while he puffed his chest like a chicken, until they had sufficient grounds on which to challenge him.
I have bigger problems than you in the Southwest region to deal with.
This comes off as more invalidation of any remaining respect he might have had for himself. You're hardly worth my time, Mr. White Man. Then they hit him with the jab, people, for the symptoms from which he is dying in order to save him from himself. The white man is slowly dying due to his own toxic masculinity, his own toxic whiteness, and his own toxic nature. And the only way for him to survive is for him to relinquish control of his resources to the globalists, who hide behind the guise of multiculturalism, aka global safety and equal rights for women. The message being conveyed to us is that allowing the self-proclaimed victim groups to take over is the only way to delay the painful death your whiteness will inevitably cause you. Just let us take the wheel now, Mr. White Man. You're too weak to fight us anyway. That's the message they want to get across. Another interesting detail that might tie in with the jab messaging is that Tony is constantly carrying around a bottle of chlorophyll. I feel like this is to subtly suggest to us that natural herbal remedies will do us no good when we're hit with a mysterious new sickness that only a super mysterious organization can provide help for. Very sussy, if I do say so myself. Suddenly, the black man who has been duped into siding with the globalists realizes they don't actually care about his interests and are only in it for their own power.
Fully mission capable. Good. Get Hammer down here to weaponize it. Sir? Justin Hammer's making a weapons presentation at the expo. We'd like this to introduce it.
Sir, I don't believe that the expo...
Colonel, the world needs to see this fast. We've got to make this happen.
Yes, General, but the...
It's also an order.
Yes, sir.
Good work, Colonel. You made your country proud.
Thank you, sir.
Then another deep state agent places Mr. Straight White Man on house arrest.
I've been authorized by Director Fury to use any means necessary to keep you on premises. If you attempt to leave or play any games, I will tase you and watch Super Nanny while you drool into the carpet.
Sound familiar? And the only reason they're not putting him down is because he serves them now. Hammer is showing weapons to Rhodes, but non-whites, homosexuals, and women are always shown as unimpressed even with the very best of what whites have to offer. Whites very often are written as having to justify their participation in society, or their existence at all. Audi! So many Audi commercials in these movies, just to make sure you don't forget that by even watching Marvel movies at all, you are entering a sales funnel. Guys, here's a little tip. If the superhero movie you're watching contains car commercials, there's a good chance that the globalists paying for all of them are gonna slip a few other things under the radar. But that's none of my business. You know what? You're right. I'm reading way too much into it. Nothing to see here, folks! Now there's a face I haven't seen in a while.
I am trying to do the job that you were meant to do.
Wow, this is some grade A revelatory shit. They know they weren't built for leadership. Everything is falling apart around her. It's almost as if the embodiment of the white female spirit is crying out to the white man to nut up and take control again. That last statement is probably going to get me put on a watch list. But it's too late to be shy now, so let's keep rolling.
I thought you two didn't get along.
No, that's not so.
It's just me you don't care for. No? Nothing?
Yep, sorry Mr. Straight White Man. Us women get along just fine when you're not ruining everything. This is a direct diss to the dynamic they had in the first movie, where Pepper Potts was rooting for him and genuinely cared about him in spite of all his flaws. The woke writers at Marvel couldn't stand that for one more second and made sure to correct it with this movie. And of course, we finish it with the iconic Black Widow girl boss leg move scene. While it's not the end of the movie, it's all the noteworthy subliminal story I was able to detect. Now, a lot of people are gonna take this video super seriously. Honestly, I don't care. You can interpret this video however you want. I had a lot of fun making it, and I'm going to be making many others just like it. But with that being said, that's gonna be it for this video. Drop a comment down below, let me know what you thought. If you enjoyed, make sure to smash the like button. If you'd like to see more, make sure to subscribe and click the bell so that you never miss any new uploads, and I will see y'all in the next video.